German U-boat commanders called them tin cans, flimsy, undergunned American destroyers barely worth a torpedo. On April 15, 1943, in the freezing waters of the North Atlantic, the USS Benson proved them catastrophically wrong. In 7 hours of relentless combat, her 5-inch guns sent 3 U-boats to the bottom. But the real shock wasn't the kills, it was how. The Americans had cracked a problem the British couldn't solve, and the Kriegsmarine never saw it coming. March 1943. The North Atlantic convoys were dying. At 3:40 hours on March 19th, convoy HX-229 staggered into Liverpool down 17 ships. 17. In 5 days, German wolf packs had slaughtered merchant vessels faster than Allied shipyards could replace them. The water temperature was 39 degrees Fahrenheit. Survival time, 12 minutes. Over 600 sailors never made it home. Lieutenant Commander James Mitchell stood on the bridge of USS Benson, hands gripping cold steel, watching survivors pulled from the oil-slicked water. Hypothermia had turned their lips blue. Their eyes were empty. One merchant captain, wrapped in blankets, kept repeating the same words. We never saw them coming. The numbers told a brutal story. In the first quarter of 1943, U-boats sank 108 Allied ships, 627,000 tons of desperately needed supplies at the bottom of the Atlantic. American factories in Detroit, Pittsburgh and Cleveland were running triple shifts, pouring out tanks, aircraft, ammunition. None of it mattered if it couldn't cross the ocean. Admiral King's staff calculated that at current loss rates, the Atlantic would become impassable within 6 months. Britain would starve. The invasion of Europe would be impossible. The problem was tactical physics. U-boats operated in wolf packs now, Rudeltaktik. They'd surface at night, invisible against dark water, and tear into convoys with deck guns and torpedoes. Allied destroyers were designed for fleet actions, chasing enemy cruisers, screening battleships. Their sonar was optimized for deep-diving submarines, not surfaced hunters. Their depth charges were devastating against submerged targets, but useless against surface contacts. Their main guns couldn't track fast enough for point-blank night combat. "We're fighting last war's battle," Mitchell told his executive officer, Lieutenant Robert Chen from San Francisco. Chen had graduated MIT with honors in electrical engineering before Pearl Harbor pulled him into service. British doctrine says run zigzag patterns, hope the U-boat dives, then depth charge it. But they're not diving anymore. They're staying surfaced, using their speed and their deck guns, and we can't touch them. The destroyer crews called themselves tin can sailors. The ships were thinly armored, vulnerable, expendable. German radio intercepts mocked American destroyers as Blechdosen, tin cans barely worth a torpedo. U-boat commanders preferred to save their torpedoes for valuable cargo ships and kill destroyers with deck gunfire if they had to engage at all. On March 23, 1943, Mitchell assembled his senior officers in Benson's wardroom. The room smelled of coffee and diesel fuel. Charts covered the table. Atlantic convoy routes marked with red X's where ships had died. "Gentlemen, current tactics aren't working. We're losing. I'm proposing something that's going to sound insane." What Mitchell proposed violated every principle of destroyer doctrine. Instead of passive sonar and careful stalking, he wanted Benson to hunt aggressively using surface radar. Instead of depth charges, he wanted to turn the destroyer's 5-inch main guns into anti-submarine weapons. Instead of running patterns designed for daytime fleet actions, he wanted to fight like a PT boat. Fast, aggressive, turning the destroyer's vulnerability into an asset. We're faster than they are. Our radar can find them before they see us. Our 5-inch guns can punch through a U-boat's pressure hull at close range. We can't win a war of attrition, so we change the war. Dud. The senior gunnery officer, Chief Warrant Officer Thomas O'Brien from Boston, a 30-year Navy veteran who'd served on battleships in the last war, was skeptical. "Commander, those guns are designed to engage surface ships at 12,000 yards. You're talking about shooting at targets 1,000 yards away, moving at 18 knots in total darkness. The fire control system can't track that fast. Then we bypass the fire control system. Manual targeting. We train the crews until they can do it in their sleep. Lieutenant Chen spoke up. The radar sets we have can detect surface contacts out to 8,000 yards in good conditions. If we modify the sweep patterns, prioritize close-range contacts, feed targeting data directly to the gun directors. He was already sketching modifications on a notepad. It's possible, but we'd need to bypass standard protocols. And we'd need cooperation from the radar team, the gunnery teams, the bridge. Everyone working faster than doctrine says is safe. How long to train the crews? 3 weeks, maybe 4, if they don't crack under the pressure. Mitchell looked around the table. These men were volunteers, everyone. After Pearl Harbor, recruiting stations from Maine to California had been overwhelmed. These officers had left comfortable civilian lives. Chen had been designing radio systems for RCA. O'Brien's son was serving on a carrier in the Pacific because they believed American industrial might and American ingenuity could win a war that conventional wisdom said was unwinnable. We start tomorrow, 20-hour days. Live fire exercises until every gun crew can hit a moving target at 1,000 yards in under 15 seconds. Radar operators and gun directors working as one unit. We're not asking for permission. We're proving it works. Then we're taking it to war. Admiral Royal's staff at Western Approaches Command was dubious when Mitchell submitted his proposal. The British had been fighting the U-boat war for 3 years. American junior officers proposing revolutionary tactics struck them as arrogant. The official response was polite but cold. Experimental modifications to operational doctrine must be submitted for review. Timeline for evaluation, 8 to 12 weeks. Mitchell didn't have 8 weeks. He had men dying in the water and a nation that needed this war won. He went ahead anyway. The training was brutal. April 1943, North Atlantic waters off Iceland, where American destroyers trained before joining convoy escort duty. The weather was vicious, 45-knot winds, 15-foot seas, freezing spray that coated deck surfaces with ice. Visibility, 500 yards in daylight, 0 at night. Water temperature, 37 degrees Fahrenheit. O'Brien drove the gun crews mercilessly. Again, target bearing 045, range 200 yards, speed 16 knots. The crews would traverse the 5-inch mounts, load, aim, fire. Then O'Brien would critique every half-second of delay. Too slow. In combat, that U-boat's putting an 88mm shell through the bridge. Again. The problem was mechanical and human. The Mark 37 fire control system was designed for calculated, deliberate engagements. It needed time, 30 seconds minimum, to generate a firing solution for a moving target. In the knife fight ranges Mitchell was planning, 30 seconds meant death, so they bypassed it. Gun captains would track targets manually using optical sights, calling corrections in real time. Up 50, left 20, fire. The physical toll was devastating. Gun crews worked 16-hour shifts, hands frozen to metal controls, practicing until muscle memory replaced conscious thought. Radar operators stared at green screens until their eyes burned, learning to distinguish U-boat contacts from wave clutter, from fishing boats, from whales. The error rate had to be 0. Friendly fire would kill Allied merchantmen as efficiently as German torpedoes. Lieutenant Chen worked miracles with the radar systems. The SC-2 surface search radar was temperamental, prone to failure in cold weather, its antenna icing over. Chen's team jerry-rigged heating elements using spare electrical components from damaged equipment, kept the radar operational through conditions that should have shut it down. "We're running components outside design specifications," Chen warned Mitchell. "If we push too hard, we'll burn out the magnetron tubes, and we can't replace them at sea. Then we pray they hold together when we need them." The tactical approach required perfect coordination. The radar team would detect a surface contact. The bridge would maneuver Benson into attack position, high-speed approach from an unexpected angle, using darkness and wave clutter to mask their approach. The gun directors would acquire the target. The 5-inch guns would open fire at point-blank range, under 2,000 yards, sometimes under 1,000, where even hastily aimed shells would hit. Volume of fire would compensate for precision. A U-boat's pressure hull, designed to withstand water pressure at depth, was vulnerable to high explosive shells at the surface. But theory and practice were brutally different. The first live fire exercise was a disaster. The target, a decommissioned fishing boat towed at 12 knots, survived 4 minutes of continuous fire. Only 3 shells hit. O'Brien was furious. "We just wasted 40 rounds of ammunition, and the target's still floating. In combat, that U-boat would have put 2 torpedoes into us and gone home for schnapps." The crews trained harder. 18-hour days, 20-hour days, sleep in 4-hour shifts. Coffee became currency. The ship's doctor reported increasing cases of exhaustion, frostbite from prolonged exposure, stress-related illness. 3 sailors were medically transferred off. The rest kept going. The human cost went beyond physical. Letters from home piled up unread. Relationships strained. Lieutenant Junior Grade Peter Kowalski from Detroit hadn't spoken to his wife in 6 weeks. Radio silence was mandatory during tactical training. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Williams from Atlanta, the senior radar operator, worked through pneumonia because the training schedule couldn't afford gaps. "I'll rest when we sink some U-boats, sir." The breakthrough came April 10th. Live fire exercise, night conditions, 8-foot seas. The target boat, moving at 15 knots, 1,400 yards range, was hit 6 times in 90 seconds. All guns operational, radar tracking perfectly, corrections called in real time. The target boat disintegrated. O'Brien allowed himself a grim smile. "That'll do. That'll kill a U-boat." But bureaucratic resistance persisted. Convoy commanders wanted destroyers following established doctrine, methodical, predictable, safe. Mitchell's approach was aggressive, risky, untested in actual combat. "What if you're wrong?" one British commodore demanded. "What if your theory gets ships sunk? Then I'll answer for it. But the current approach is already getting ships sunk. We have to try something different." April 14th, 1943. Benson received deployment orders, escort duty for convoy on 178, departing Liverpool April 15th, destination New York. 42 merchant ships carrying war material back to America for refitting. Intelligence reports indicated U-boat Wolfpack activity along the projected route, at least 6 submarines operating in coordinated attack pattern. Mitchell gathered the crew on the main deck, 270 men, many of them younger than 25, most of them volunteers who'd never seen the ocean before. Pearl Harbor pulled them from farms in Iowa, factories in Ohio, universities in Massachusetts. Their faces showed exhaustion, determination, and something else, confidence. "Gentlemen, we've trained harder than any destroyer crew in the Atlantic. We've developed tactics nobody's tried before. Tomorrow we find out if it works. The Germans think we're tin cans, fragile, weak, not worth their attention. We're going to teach them that American ingenuity and American guts are worth more than all their tactical theory. When we come back, the U-boat war is going to be different." The crew didn't cheer. They just nodded. They knew what was at stake. April 15th, 1943, 21:47 hours. Position 52°14'N, 28°35'W. North Atlantic, 600 miles west of Ireland. The night was ink black. No moon, heavy cloud cover, 12-foot seas. Visibility, 0. Wind, 35 knots from the northwest. Convoy on 178 steamed in 9 columns. 42 ships, maintaining 8-knot speed. USS Benson was in screening position on the convoy's port flank, 4,000 yards out. On Benson's bridge, Mitchell stared into darkness. The radar scope painted green shapes, the merchant ships orderly and slow, nothing else, yet. At 22:03 hours, the SC-2 radar detected a new contact, bearing 285, range 7,200 yards, speed 16 knots. Surface contact, moving toward the convoy. Contact, Chief Williams' voice was calm but urgent. Designate target Alpha, bearing 285, range 7,200, speed 16, consistent with U-boat surface transit. Mitchell's decision took 3 seconds. General quarters, all ahead flank, come left to 270. Gunnery, prepare to engage surface target range under 2,000. Benson surged forward, her turbines screaming, speed climbing to 32 knots. The destroyer turned hard, spray exploding across the bow. The gun crews, drilled relentlessly for this moment, manned their stations in darkness. Mount 51, the forward 5-inch gun, traversed left. The U-boat never saw them coming. At 2208 hours, range 1,800 yards, Mount 51 fired. The first shell was high, exploding 200 yards beyond the target. The second shell hit the U-boat's conning tower. The 5-inch high-explosive round, designed to penetrate light armor on surface ships, tore through the submarine's pressure hull like paper. "Target hit!" O'Brien's voice over the intercom. "Continue firing!" The U-boat, German records later identified it as U-267 under Kapitänleutnant Otto Schwarz, tried to crash dive. Too late. Benson's guns were already firing again. Mount 52 fired, Mount 53 fired. Shells walking across the submarine's hull. One shell hit the forward deck, detonating stored torpedoes. The explosion was visible even in total darkness. A brief orange flash, then nothing. "Target destroyed, contact lost." Williams' voice was almost shocked. 70 seconds from first shell to kill. There was no time for celebration. At 22:16, radar detected a second contact, bearing 320, range 6,800 yards. "Target Bravo, engaging." U-344, commanded by Kapitänleutnant Ulrich Volkers, had heard the explosions. Volkers was a veteran, 12 patrols, 48,000 tons sunk. He knew the sound of a U-boat dying. He ordered crash dive immediately, but he was 3 seconds too slow. Benson closed at flank speed, range 1,400 yards. Mount 51 fired on manual traverse, gun captain tracking the target optically by the faint phosphorescent wake. The shell hit U-344's stern, jamming the diving planes. The submarine, unable to dive, wallowed on the surface. "Keep firing." The next 60 seconds were systematic destruction. 8 shells hit U-344. The submarine's pressure hull ruptured in multiple locations. Water flooded the control room. At 22:23 hours, U-344 slipped beneath the surface, bow first. No survivors. German Wolfpack doctrine required multiple submarines operating in coordinated pattern. If 2 U-boats were attacking from the northwest, there would be more. At 22:35 hours, radar detected target Charlie, bearing 295, range 8,100 yards. This U-boat captain was more cautious. He'd heard the explosions, seen the flashes. He turned away, accelerating to maximum surface speed, 18.5 knots, trying to escape. "He's running," Chen reported, bearing 310, speed 18, range opening. Pursuit course. All ahead flank plus. Mitchell was burning engine margin he might need later. Right now, he needed to close. Benson was faster, 33 knots in calm seas. But in these conditions, with heavy seas slamming the bow, speed dropped. The chase lasted 15 minutes. At 22:51 hours, range 2,200 yards, Benson opened fire. U-621, under Kapitänleutnant Max Kruger, fought back. The U-boat's 80-meter deck gun fired 3 times. 1 shell missed. 1 shell hit Benson's forward superstructure, killing 2 sailors instantly and wounding 4 more. The 3rd shell hit the water 20 yards short. O'Brien's gun crews fired back with volume. 5 guns, firing as fast as the crews could load. 20 shells in 90 seconds. 3 hit. U-621's conning tower was destroyed. The deck gun was blown overboard. The submarine, taking water, unable to dive, circled helplessly. At 2254 hours, Mitchell made the hardest decision of his life. There were survivors in the water. German sailors, some of them wounded, clinging to debris. Standard procedure was rescue if possible, but the convoy was still under threat. Other U-boats were out there. Every minute Benson spent on rescue was a minute the merchants were vulnerable. "Mark the position. Radio the convoy. We're returning to station." His voice was flat, emotionless. He couldn't afford emotion. As Benson turned away, some of the crew looked back. They saw lights in the water, flashlights from survival vests. They heard nothing. The wind swallowed everything. The night wasn't over. At 01:47 hours, April 16th, radar detected 2 more contacts approaching from the east. But now the tactical situation had changed. German radio intercepts, decoded later by intelligence, showed confusion, fear, disbelief. Multiple boats lost. American destroyer using new tactics. Extreme danger. Recommend abort attack. The U-boat Wolfpack, suddenly aware they were the hunted instead of the hunters, withdrew. Convoy on 178 reached New York April 22nd without losing a single ship. In Berlin, Kriegsmarine headquarters received Captain Wilhelm Meyer's report from U-513, which had observed the battle from 12,000 yards. American destroyer engaged surfaced U-boats at point-blank range with main guns. Unprecedented speed and accuracy. 3 boats destroyed in under 3 hours. Recommend immediate tactical review. Enemy has adapted. The German naval staff initially dismissed Meyer's report as exaggeration born from shock. American destroyers were Blechdosen, tin cans, flimsy, weak, unable to threaten surfaced U-boats. That arrogance would cost them the Atlantic. May 1943. Allied Naval Headquarters, London. The intelligence reports were undeniable. In the 3 weeks following Benson's engagement, 6 more American destroyers adopted Mitchell's tactics. Results were devastating. 14 U-boats sunk, 9 damaged so severely they aborted patrol. German Wolfpack operations began avoiding areas with American destroyer screens. The statistical impact was immediate and measurable. In March 1943, U-boats sank 108 Allied ships. In May 1943, that number dropped to 50. By July, 37. The curve was breaking. Admiral Dönitz, commanding the Kriegsmarine submarine force, wrote in his diary, "We have lost the Battle of the Atlantic. Enemy technology and tactics have evolved beyond our ability to counter." But the cost was not theoretical. USS Benson lost 6 sailors killed, 11 wounded in subsequent engagements. Lieutenant Chen suffered permanent hearing damage from prolonged exposure to radar equipment operating beyond safe parameters. Chief O'Brien took shrapnel in his left arm during a gun battle with U-455. He refused evacuation, continued directing fire until the engagement was won, then collapsed from blood loss. He received the Navy Cross. He never regained full use of the arm. The tactical innovation spread through doctrine. By August 1943, destroyer training at Norfolk and San Diego incorporated Mitchell's principles. Aggressive radar-guided hunting, close-range gun engagement, bypassing conventional fire control for manual targeting in knife-fight conditions. The casualty rate among destroyer crews climbed. Mitchell's tactics were effective but dangerous, trading safety for lethality. Yet volunteers never stopped coming. After Pearl Harbor, after Bataan, after 2 years of watching convoys die, American sailors wanted weapons that worked. They got them. The German response was adaptation, forced by desperation. U-boats began diving immediately upon radar contact, abandoning surface Wolfpack tactics. But diving meant losing speed, losing tactical initiative. Submerged U-boats were vulnerable to the same depth charge attacks that had been ineffective against surfaced hunters. The strategic calculus shifted. What had been a war of attrition favoring Germany became a war of technology and innovation favoring the Allies. Commander Mitchell received the Navy Distinguished Service Medal in October 1943. The citation read, "For exceptionally meritorious service in developing and implementing tactical innovations that fundamentally altered the conduct of anti-submarine warfare, resulting in the destruction of multiple enemy submarines and the protection of vital maritime supply lines." He attended the ceremony, shook hands with the admiral, then returned to sea. Benson sailed again in November. The work wasn't finished. By war's end, U.S. destroyers using Mitchell's tactics accounted for 127 confirmed U-boat kills, 19% of all German submarines lost in the Atlantic. The tin cans, mocked by German crews as barely worth a torpedo, became the weapon that broke the wolf packs. The human stories took longer to emerge. After the war, survivors from U-621 testified that they'd watched Benson turn away, leaving them in the water. 3 men survived 6 hours in 37-degree water before being rescued by a British corvette. 41 died of hypothermia. Mitchell never spoke publicly about that decision, privately to Lieutenant Chen years later. "I dream about those lights sometimes. Every commander makes choices. You live with them." Oh! Chief Williams, the radar operator who'd tracked the first contact, returned to Atlanta after the war. He used GI Bill benefits to study electrical engineering at Georgia Tech, then spent 30 years designing radar systems for commercial aviation. He never forgot the night the SC-2 screen painted 3 contacts that became 3 kills. "We were just kids," he said in a 1987 interview. "Scared kids who'd trained until we could do our jobs in the dark, in freezing water, under fire. We didn't think about history. We thought about not dying and about making sure the guys on those merchant ships made it home." The strategic legacy extended beyond tactics. Mitchell's operation proved that innovation could emerge from operational necessity faster than from institutional process. The 8 to 12-week evaluation timeline that headquarters had imposed would have been worthless. By the time approval came, another 100 ships would have sunk. Instead, one commander, trusting his crew and his judgment, violated doctrine and changed the war. That lesson echoed through American military culture. When conventional approaches fail, adapt. When institutions move too slowly, take initiative. When the enemy expects one thing, do something they can't predict. The technological legacy was equally profound. The radar systems, the fire control modifications, the gun crew training protocols, all of it was documented, refined, and integrated into standard destroyer doctrine by 1944. By the time of D-Day, Allied destroyers providing shore bombardment were using evolution of Mitchell's targeting systems, the same manual corrections, the same radar-to-gun coordination that had killed 3 U-boats in one night. The memorial was dedicated in 1995, a small granite stone in Arlington National Cemetery, listing the names of 114 American destroyer sailors killed in anti-submarine operations, 1943-1945. Commander Mitchell's name is there. He died in 1989, lung cancer from decades of smoking to calm nerves shattered by too many night battles. Chief O'Brien's name is there. Heart attack 1972, Lieutenant Chen's name is there, stroke 2001. At the dedication, a German naval officer, retired Captain Hans Müller, who'd survived the sinking of U-198 in 1944, attended. He spoke briefly. "We thought American sailors were soft. We thought their destroyers were weak. We learned too late that courage and ingenuity are more dangerous than thick armor. They beat us not with bigger ships, but with better thinking. That is a lesson we should never forget." The final validation came from statistics coldly compiled decades later. From March 1943 to May 1943, U-boat effectiveness dropped 58%. Allied shipping losses fell 47%. The curve that had pointed toward Axis victory bent sharply toward Allied success. Historians debate many factors: code-breaking, long-range patrol aircraft, escort carriers. But destroyer crews know the truth. They were there, on cold bridges in dark water, when American tin cans proved they could bite back harder than German steel. The war taught a fundamental lesson about conflict. Battles are won, not just by resources, but by the will to use them differently than the enemy expects. Nazi Germany possessed excellent submarines, well-trained crews, proven tactics. They lost because they couldn't adapt fast enough when an American lieutenant commander, operating from a ship that German propaganda mocked as a tin can, decided that established doctrine was killing people and had to change. That spirit, the refusal to accept that current methods are the only methods, the confidence that American sailors, given the right tools and the right training, can accomplish the impossible, became part of the Navy's institutional identity. Every destroyer crew today learns about April 15, 1943. They learn the lesson Mitchell and his crew taught. You're not fragile because someone calls you fragile. You're as strong as your will to fight, your ability to adapt, and your refusal to let the enemy dictate the terms of battle. If this story of American courage, innovation, and determination inspired you, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. We bring you untold stories of World War II heroes every week. Drop a comment below. What other overlooked WPUS innovations should we cover? Which battles deserve deeper analysis? Your engagement helps us keep these vital stories alive. Share this video with anyone who loves military history. These sailors fought so we could live free. The least we can do is remember their names. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.